name is Kyle Hall, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Western North Carolina Field Coordinator for Americans for Prosperity. Now, how many of you have heard of Americans for Prosperity before? Okay. Well, this is unusual. I usually go to Tea Party meetings and everybody's hands go up. So tonight I'm going to inform you of who we are and what we do and ways that you can get involved. And then, as you can tell, later tonight we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. We're going to get to the hard work that's at hand for this election. And so I ask this first question at every meeting that I go to, because I think it's important that we realize what's at stake not only in this election, but in future elections. So how many of you feel that you have ever lived the American dream? Have ever lived it? Now, how many of you feel your children or grandchildren will? This is a problem in our country, that the American dream is slowly becoming a thing of the past, and our government is the reason for this. With crippling entitlement programs, an astronomical national debt, overtaxation, wasteful government spending, crippling government regulations, the American dream is slowly becoming a page out of a history book. And as Mike Huckabee had said in 2008, Congress is spending money like John Edwards at a beauty shop. And he was right. I mean, if you imagine our national debt, imagine it this way. Imagine $100 bills stacked 7 feet high, as tall as I am, and these stacks cover an entire football field from sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone. That one football field would just be $1 trillion. So now imagine 16 of these football fields with stacks of $100 bills 7 feet high, sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone. Now, how many of you in this room have ever heard of the French dream?
What?
The French dream, or the Brazilian dream, or the Chinese dream?
Oh, well.
You haven't, but you've all heard of the American dream. The American dream is about leaving a better country than you inherited. It's about giving your children, your grandchildren, more liberty, more freedom of opportunity than you've had. I can assure you that my parents had a better life than my grandparents did. They were the first to go to college. And my grandparents probably had a better life than my great-grandparents, because they were the first to live and work off of their own family farm. But now we're at a point in history where we're not sure whether the generations after us will have a better life than we do today. And if you think of history as a 12-inch ruler, and this ruler represents the 5,000 years of reported history of man, and the first 11.5 inches of this ruler, man's life will be pretty similar to that of his neighbors. There wouldn't be much social mobility. Man would have to have been born into riches to be wealthy. He was probably a subsistence farmer, lived in the same village his father, his grandfather, and the generations before had lived in. And his children, his grandchildren, and the generations after would live there as well. And it was life. It was short and it was rough. But then America came along, and 56 men met in a room not much bigger than this one, and pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, and a belief of self-governance, and a belief that rights come from God, not from king, and a belief that man had the right to be independent, and that all men were created equal. And then look what happens in that last half inch of that ruler. The changes in this country have been phenomenal, because no country in history in the world has ever produced more wealth, more prosperity, more freedom of opportunity, more liberty than the United States under a capitalist free market system. And America has always been, and should always be, an exceptional country, and we shouldn't be ashamed to admit that. You know, people aren't dying to get to China. They're not dying to get to France. They're not dying to get to Brazil. And there's nothing against these countries, and there's no reason for us to be arrogant. We have to realize how truly exceptional America is, and we shouldn't be ashamed of it. But the left wants us to be ashamed of it. They think that the rest of the world should catch up to us, and that government can make the best decisions on our behalf. And we know that's not true. And we've seen that in this past 4 years. President Obama, yes, he did inherit, well, I'm not going to say inherit. He came into office at a very difficult time. And we're not going to lie about that. The economy was in shambles. And we put our trust in just one man to change course and to give hope back to the American people. I sure as hell did vote for him. And I'm probably sure that none of you did either. But the American people spoke. And we put this trust in this one man to change course and to turn our country around. And what accomplishments has he made? Well, we've had 43 months of unemployment above 8%. And in some counties in this state, and I'm not lying here, some counties in North Carolina, unemployment's at 20%. Just look at the coast. And some of the far western counties, where it's in at least 10%. I'm sure in this county it's probably at 10% as well. And we now have a $16 trillion national debt, which I've already explained to you is pretty astronomical. We've had a $1.73 trillion takeover of healthcare. And lastly, but certainly not the last, but lastly, we've invested billions of dollars into wasteful green energy scams like Solyndra. Now, how many of you remember what Solyndra is? Well, Solyndra was this green energy maker that contributed millions of dollars to the Obama campaign in 2008. When he got into office, they then received $500 million in taxpayer money. Well, then the company went bankrupt. But instead of firing employees before the 2010 elections, the Obama administration continued to funnel money into this failed company because they didn't want to lay off employees before the 2010 elections. This is called cronyism, and it shouldn't be happening in America. Now, I don't know if many of you remember, but the Democrats and the liberals had this big convention just down the road in Charlotte. It was a kind of a big deal. But let's just look at how anti-business the left is. You remember that empty stadium that they couldn't fill? The Bank of America Stadium? Remember how they couldn't call it Bank of America Stadium? They instead wanted to call it Panther Stadium? And then just down the road where they were actually meeting, they had Time Warner Cable Arena, but they couldn't call it Time Warner Cable Arena. They had to call it Bobcat Arena. Now, you know, I'm going to support the Charlotte Bobcats because they're the home team, but let's look at this. How low and anti-business can you be when you have to rename Time Warner Cable Arena Bobcat Arena after the worst NBA team, not only this past season, but in the history of the NBA? This is how low that they can get. And folks, it's time to take the anti-business, anti-free market people out and replace them with pro-business, pro-free market people. Enough is enough. And so at Americans for Prosperity, we believe that government at all levels is too expensive. We believe that taxes have the power to destroy the incentive to work, to save, and to invest. We believe that you know how to spend your money better than the government does. We believe in unleashing all American energy barriers. This includes offshore drilling. And we believe, lastly, and I think this is the most important one for this election, that a patient and a doctor should make healthcare decisions in this nation and not some government bureaucrat. And so if you believe in these things, and I'm sure you all do or you wouldn't be sitting in this hot room, I feel like I'm sweating like John Edwards at a courtroom right now. But if you believe in these things, like I know you do, then I would urge you to become an active member of Americans for Prosperity. We're looking for committed folks to join in our grassroots cause, to fight for the things that we believe in. Because folks, this election is way too important to sit on the sidelines. We can sit here all day and talk among like-minded people, but we have to realize that there are a lot of undecided people in this state that have not made up their mind, that do not know whether Obama, believe it or not, a lot of people do not know whether Obama has helped the economy or hurt the economy. We have to go to these folks and we have to educate them on the simple fact that President Obama's economic policies have been a complete failure and they cannot continue past January 20th, 2013. We have to change course, but like I said, we have to play the game and put the boots on the ground in order to change course. Barack Obama is not just going to voluntarily leave the White House. He has to be stopped. And so at Americans for Prosperity, we're out there trying to stop him and his